This is Ben Shapiro. He reviewed a Satanist video and gave us priceless nuggets of wisdom on this subject. So let's listen, see what he has to say here.
The rise of the Satanists is kind of fascinating. I'm not saying there are Satanists around every corner, that the Satanists are hiding under bed, anything like that. But one of the things that has happened in our post-God culture is that Satanism and its
post-God culture? Where the hell did he get that? He thinks we're in a post-God culture right now? This is a joke, right? He's got to be joking. Christian nationalism is storming the gates, okay? No, Christian nationalism is in. They are controlling things at the moment. I don't want to hear it. He knows that. He is one person I believe is completely full of shit. He knows better. He can't possibly not know that what he's saying is a lie. He can't believe otherwise because he's a Harvard graduate, a Harvard Law School graduate. Truthfully, you can't make it through law school and make the arguments that he is making, in my opinion.
Sort of weird philosophical offshoots have now embedded themselves all over American society. I don't mean...
No. Satanism has not embedded itself all over society or its cultural offshoots or whatever. Give me a break, bro.
Have now embedded themselves all over American society. I don't mean people who literally worship Satan.
Hello.
I just mean that the political positions and the philosophical positions that are taken by Satanists, like sort of the modern day Satanists, they've embedded themselves everywhere.
So he's saying that like Satanists are really in power in America. Is he trying to start a new satanic panic? Is that what he's doing?
Almost impossible not to see the religious viewpoint that is known as Satanism, meaning the worship of the altar of God, the other side of God, in sort of traditional Christian theology, the fallen angel, right, who is now rebelling against God, and this is an act of good. You know, that sort of philosophy has now diffused itself throughout the society.
No, it hasn't. It's completely fictitious, but just to expand on that a little bit, the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan are two major Satanist groups. I'm not a huge fan of the Church of Satan. They're okay, I guess. They're kind of if I'm going to be honest. The Satanic Temple's where it's at. Those people are really cool. They've worked with YouTubers a lot. They've spoken with us. I know people that know them and everything. Anyway, they respect Satan as a literary character. If you think about it, in the Bible, Satan never told a single lie, not one. But God told lots of lies. You can rationalize and justify all you want, but those are the facts. God said, on the day that you eat the fruit, you will surely die. That didn't happen. Satan said, or supposedly said, it wasn't even Satan, it was a snake. But let's go with the Christian canon for a moment. Satan says to Adam and Eve, you will not die. You will gain knowledge of good and evil and be like gods. And sure enough. So the point is, imagine with me for a moment a scenario in which Satan really won the battle and dictated the Bible as though he was the good guy rather than the bad guy, as though he was God. Like, what if God was actually the snake and Satan was the bad guy who took control from God? And God is the snake, God the snake, is trying to help everybody by giving us real information and trying to help us overthrow God or whatever. Imagine that for a moment. That is the not actual belief behind the Satanic Temple, like they don't actually believe that about the Bible, but that's a concept behind it. Satan is a respectable, interesting literary character that stands for fighting fascism. It stands for rebellion, thinking for yourself, individuality, all of the qualities that America purports to love. Anyway, let's keep listening.
An act of good. That sort of philosophy has now diffused itself throughout the society. I don't mean like literal Satan worship. I mean the idea that opposition to God is an act of good. The reason that this comes to mind is because there was a clip that was floating around the internet yesterday from Boston SatanCon.
How about new?
By the way, this clip is from, it's pretty old, but it's interesting anyway. May 2nd, 2023.
First of all, I should mention at this point, the Satanic Temple, the one that was holding SatanCon, apparently has about 700,000 members at this point, registered members. They put out a press release on this. According to statistics published by the Pew Research Center, this new membership milestone ranks the Satanic Temple ahead of worldwide numbers of Rastafari and just under Unitarian Universalism in total worldwide adherence. And so there's a video going around from SatanCon 2023 of a young woman who's ripping pages out of the Bible and throwing them on the...
Like, why would Ben Shapiro care about this? He's not a Christian. He's Jewish. He doesn't give a shit about the Bible, right? It's because he wants to weaponize Christians' hate and anger. That's what he's doing. We are watching him weaponize Christianity against people.
She's just shouting as she rips pages out of a Bible and casts them on the ground. She said before doing this, quote, "We stand here today in defiance of their siege and destroy their symbols of oppression."
Oh, I see. So he pops up an image of a couple of people wearing masks because you think that's an image of oppression? Bro, you didn't have to wear a mask if you didn't want at any point ever during the pandemic. You couldn't, well, you know what? You couldn't go to certain places, like certain restaurants, certain sit-down areas. But I don't think there was a mask mandate at any point, not a federal one, ever. There was also not a lockdown, official, like you're not allowed to leave unless it's for groceries. That did not happen. That was just society saying, holy shit, this is real. We've got to be really careful and listen to what they're saying. The government recommended things as we learned information. People were wiping off their groceries when they came, just in case, COVID had gotten on the groceries, I remember. People were not going outside because they didn't know how it transmitted. And as we learned new information, how dangerous it is or isn't, and all this other stuff, we slowly but surely started getting back to normal life as much as we could. One of those things that we did was wear masks for protection. Like, what's the big deal? Why are these people so wrapped up in their heads about masks?
She also ripped up a thin blue line flag representing the police.
No. The thin blue line flag doesn't represent the police. It represents the oppositional movement pushing back against, it's a counter protest to the protest against police brutality. That's what it is. They're protesting the protest of brutality.
She also ripped up a thin blue line flag representing the police. A male leader joined her in tearing that thin blue line flag in two. They tossed that on the floor while the crowd cheered. And then Satanists apparently picked up the ripped pages off the floor and posed with them for pictures. The male leader apparently said, "We must build true community outside the virtual. Rebelling comes in many forms, to each and their own, within their own capabilities and their own situation. For some of us, merely existing one more day is victory. For those of us who can, we must stand up to those who cannot." So
have better words ever been spoken? Have truer words ever been spoken?
Merely existing one more day is victory. For those of us who can, we must stand up to those who cannot. So
must stand up to those who cannot. Interesting. I can't imagine why anybody would have a problem with that messaging, honestly.
The temple, the Satanic Temple, the temple of Satanism or whatever this
the Satanic Temple. You had it right the first time.
Ridiculous organization is, it claims to be non-theistic. They say that they don't actually believe in a personal Satan, like the supernatural being.
That's correct. Almost nobody does. I'll take that step. I'll say nobody actually believes. Well, all right, rephrase. Nobody is a Satanist. No Satanists actually believe in like a literal Satan. There are a couple of weird little fringe groups out there with like 15 members or something. The Order of Nine Angles, Joy of Satan is another. There are some theistic Satanist groups or whatever. But again, there are like 3 of them total. Order of Nine Angles is actually a terrorist group to my knowledge. I haven't researched them in a while, but anyway. Yeah. The point is pretty much every Satanist in society today is non-theistic. They don't believe in a literal Satan.
That would be Satan.
That just makes no sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
Instead,
no, they just respect the literary character.
They hold these basic...
Dude, and you know what? Bill Nye would be disgusted at the fact that Ben Shapiro is using him to further pro-white nationalist propaganda.
Satan.
That just makes no sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
Instead, they hold these basic secularist principles, but they call it satanic because Satan is the adversary of God, and God supposedly does not like these principles. And as you will note, the crossover between the fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple and the fundamental tenets of sort of left-wing liberalism at this point are almost indistinguishable.
Yeah, that's by design. That's not because the left conformed to Satanism. That's because Satanists value those things. We value human rights. You know what he's doing right now? It's exactly like this. Do you know that Hitler drank water and he killed a bunch of people? If you drink water, you might also kill a bunch of people, so you shouldn't drink water. That's the line of logic. Seriously.
Which is why the SatanCon 2023 schedule featured, and I'm now reading you the names of some of the events at SatanCon 2023. Deconstructing your religious upbringing with Judas Marduk. Fake name, right? Reclaiming the trans...
Well, some of them are fake, but no, actually, I know people that changed their name. Like Aaron Ra is Aaron Ra's legal name. That is his real name. So anyway, whatever.
Judas Marduk. Fake name, right? Reclaiming the trans body. Atheistic strategies for self-determining and empowerment. Ah, yes, the trans body. Because obviously, Satan is a big fan of the trans, according to the Satanic Temple.
Well,
No, he's a big fan of human rights, actually. But okay, just keep lying about it, I guess.
Obviously, Satan is a big fan of the trans, according to the Satanic Temple.
well, you said it, pal.
Sins...
Dude, I'm sorry. I love that he stuck in a clip of The Boys, not realizing that this show was making fun of him. It was making fun of Ben Shapiro and Trump more specifically, I think, with the blonde hair and everything else. I mean, it's so on the nose you can't miss it.
Sins of the Flesh, Satanism, and Self-Pleasure from Dr. Eric Sprenkle. Reimagining Lilith as an archetype for reproductive justice, according to Amanda Barton. And Satanism and the BIPOC Experience from Sit Lally and Panel. So just to check off those boxes, that would be why religion is terrible. That would be transgenderism. That would be hedonism and masturbation, abortion, and racial intersectionality.
Yeah, those are issues that people care about. Racial intersectionality. Like, why is Ben Shapiro opposed to that? Really? He cannot have gone through law school and not know that he can't not know what racial intersectionality is. It's impossible for him to have gone through Harvard Law School and not know. Different demographics or different, like, traits, or I don't know what you call it, like different immutable properties about you, your skin color or your gender or whatever. Those things intersect because people are treated differently if they're women, and they're treated differently if they're black, and they're treated differently if they're trans. People are treated differently based on these different qualities about them, and those things intersect. I don't understand how we can not know that.
Those are the things that are being reviewed at SatanCon 2023.
Like, every conservative convention discusses those things too. They're just complaining on the other side.
There is a reason for this. Here are the 7 fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple. And the reason, again, that I'm bringing this up, not just because this clip is floating around the internet, but because once you recognize that so much of today's politics, so much of today's value system is built around opposition to traditional morality.
So opposition to Christianity is opposition to traditional morality, he says. Interesting. Christianity is traditional morality, is what he's saying. Do I even need to dissect that? We do not get our morality from the Bible. It is literally impossible because every moral precept the Bible proposes is reversed a chapter later because the authors were of different social classes, kings and peasants, rich and poor, across the spectrum. And they all had different views on things. And guess what? The author's biases slipped in. You can clearly see it. If you have a moral position, like you don't think women should be involved in ministry, you can justify that with the Bible. If you think women should be involved in the ministry, you can justify that with the Bible. Jesus involved women in the ministry. Those verses about it, 2 Timothy 2:12, that's fake. That was added later. Paul did not say that. I shall not suffer a woman to teach. She'll be in subjugation to a man, whatever. It's fake. You literally cannot get your morality from the Bible because it is so diverse in the things that it says. Thousands of pages, largely nonsense.
You can actually spot where the problem may lie in the destruction of our civil society. The 7 fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple are: 1 should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Right? Reason is going to replace, again, these are people who call themselves Satanists. Reason is going to replace religion. There is no objective morality. All that exists is what's in your mind. And
that's correct. Yes, that is absolutely correct. There is no objective morality. People that claim that they get their morality from the Bible already have a set of values that they adhere to and are looking through the Bible for affirmation that those values are correct. And a lot of those values are held because their parents held them, like anti-gay marriage, for example. Prejudice is learned. It's not something we're born with. It's not like something that, it's not like in our genes. People are prejudiced because somebody knew that they could use that to benefit themselves by turning people against somebody else. And it worked. It carries on to this day. And on morality, we don't have an objective morality. We don't. Our ability to build models in our heads was the thing that gave us the ability to understand empathy. Like the ability to model a plan to catch a mammoth, for example. One guy's standing down there with a big butterfly net while another one is running toward the mammoth with a spear to scare it into the butterfly net. Everybody in that system had models in their head of what was happening, and that's the basis for empathy. We can build a model in our head of what somebody else, our friend, is experiencing. We can experience that in our minds with him. So we don't want suffering to exist in the world for that reason. We want to eliminate suffering to the best of our ability. That's where morality comes from. And if you notice, different societies have different standards of morality. They have different moral precepts because they learned different values throughout their lives, throughout the generations. It is not objective, period.
Reason is going to replace religion. There is no objective morality. All that exists is what's in your mind. And it's all about compassion and reason.
So is compassion and reason bad? I don't understand why he's saying this.
This is the hallmark of sort of Enlightenment thinking, post-Enlightenment thinking. It goes absolutely nowhere because as it turns out, when you leave people to their own devices in terms of reason and compassion, they tend to have compassion for themselves and their friends, and they tend to utilize their reason to justify their own cruel and bad behavior.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Let me just try to break that down. So he's saying if we base our morals off of reason and compassion, then we inevitably don't care about people that are outside of our social circles. Inevitably, it must follow. It is a necessary product if we do not base our morals on the Bible. If we instead base them on our own propensity for compassion, then we will inevitably and without question not care about people that aren't like us. Hey, Jagoff, that is the point of building this framework for laws in the United States where we try to eliminate suffering. That is the whole point behind it. So he just invalidated his complaint.
Of the 7 fundamental tenets, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions, right? All of tradition should be worn down and destroyed because we have these higher ideals of justice that we can't actually explain, but it means...
Can't explain higher ideals of justice that you can't explain. No, it can be explained. I mean, I'm not sure which specific things he's referring to, but, the Satanic Temple has a set of ideals for, the justice system. Is that what he's talking about, I guess? I mean, this is just completely fictitious. And this traditionalism should be worn down and destroyed or whatever. I'm not sure what he's talking about, but there is a struggle historically between going backward and going forward. Right-wing populists have historically appealed to going backward. Make Germany great again, for example. Make America great again. And revolutions, on the other hand, are more in favor of moving forward. In fact, they're so in favor of moving forward that they'll even start a new date, start a new calendar, a new dating system. Start from year 0. Like in the French Revolution, for example, they were disturbed by their past. So that's kind of the eternal struggle, is the point.
Should prevail over laws and institutions, right? All of tradition should be worn down and destroyed.
I don't think all tradition should be worn down and destroyed. I don't think they believe that either. But I want to move forward. I want to make progress on society. You want to go back to the 1950s? Do you know how horrifically bad the 50s were? It was a monstrously evil time with how people were treated.
Because we have these higher ideals of justice that we can't actually explain, but it means that everything that is old should just be bashed down. One's body...
It's just bullshit. He's just making this up. Does he believe the things that he's saying right now? I can't tell.
One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
Bodily autonomy is what that's called, yes. And we value that in the law, and he knows that as a lawyer. He knows that.
Because all you are is your body and your subjective sense of pleasure. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Well, the Satanic Temple presumably does not believe totally in the freedoms of others because they're obviously very much pro-abortion. They're in favor of the trans.
Yeah. The freedom of others to make decisions for their own bodies. He knows this argument. Do I really need to go through this? He certainly knows this. You get in a car accident and you black out. You wake up in a hospital bed next to somebody who's a famous violinist, and you are giving your blood to this person. What just happened is a violation of your bodily autonomy. You have the full right, and you should have the right, to pull the IV out of your arm. Even if the person's going to die, you have no obligation to, or you shouldn't have any obligation to give over your autonomy, your ability to make decisions for yourself. Now, with abortion, to circle back around, it's the exact same thing. If you want to call it a person, which it's not, simply a grouping of cells, literally like too small to see. But if you want to call it that, we can use that argument, the bodily autonomy argument. Nobody has a right to use our bodies for any reason without our permission, period. Full stop. That's it. He knows that argument. You cannot convince me he doesn't. It's a classic bodily autonomy argument. Like, we don't talk about bodily autonomy much, but we totally should. It's so ridiculously important, and it's being violated all the time. Like circumcision, for example, a violation of bodily autonomy.
Others because they're obviously very much pro-abortion. They're in favor of the transing of the children and all the rest. Beliefs should conform.
In favor of transing the children. Okay, now it's a verb, I guess. Transing them. Okay.
To one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's belief. Says once again the Satanic Temple that is called the Satanic Temple.
What point's he making?
And also is a backer of abortion and transgenderism among children.
What point is he making? He says the Satanic Temple's tenets are value science. Says the Satanic Temple. Can you imagine the Satanic Temple saying such a thing? Base beliefs on science. The Satanic Temple. What point are you making?
People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused, and every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. So again, it's this sort of Gnostic spirit prevails over.
No, brother, it's not. It is the exact opposite of that.
Over action, spirit prevails over word, spirit prevails over law.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What does any of that mean? Is he trying to turn it into like a theology intentionally to get people to hate it more? I don't know.
It's feelings, but it's also science, but it's also Satanism. Okay, now the reason, again, that I'm bringing this up is because the perspectives that are being mirrored by the Satanic Temple, the Satanic Temple is taking itself not from secular culture. I mean, the secular culture is not taking itself from Satanism. Satanism.
There you go. You got it. This is the point he was making in the beginning. He was implying that they were taking it from Satanism. And now he's just admitting it.
Taking itself not from secular culture. I mean, the secular culture is not taking itself from Satanism. Satanism, in this particular iteration, is taking itself from just general secular values. And so when you see the identity of the...
Oh, so you should not be for secular values because Satanists are for secular values. I see. So you should value... you know what? Satanists are against slavery. Let's take the position against the Satanists. Why don't we? Are you telling me that slavery is good because Satanists oppose it? That's literally the degree of argumentation that he's laying down for us right now. That is what he's saying. If a Satanist is pro-slavery, or if a Satanist is anti-slavery, we should be pro-slavery.
Too. That should tell you something about where we stand morally in Western society today. The coincidence between sort of secular morality and Satanism is very clear, at least
the coincidence between them?
According to the Satanic Temple. They said they do not subscribe to supernaturalism. So in that way, we do not believe that Satan is a deity, being, or person. As an organized religion, we actively provide outreach and participate in public affairs where the issues might benefit from rational, satanic insight.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
What is their mission? The mission is to encourage benevolence and empathy among all people. We believe, and we should all be guided by our consciences to undertake noble pursuits, guided by our individual wills. Right? The Nietzschean Superman. It's all will.
He just basically called them Nazis by saying that. Hitler was super into Nietzsche, and a lot of the Nazis like valued Nietzsche very much. I think he was German, and he was a philosopher, and he was kind of nonsensical, honestly. But they loved Nietzsche. And what was the other?
Guided by our individual wills, right? The Nietzschean Superman.
Superman, Übermensch. It was a German word that was used in contrast to Untermensch, subhuman. Like the Jews were Untermensch. The Germans or the Aryans are Übermensch. What a colossal scumbag, dude. Really.
Stop it. Get some help.
Consciences to undertake noble pursuits, guided by our individual wills, right? The Nietzschean Superman. It's all will. The Satanic Temple practices non-theistic Satanism. We believe religion can and should be divorced from superstition. As such, we do not believe in either God or the devil as supernatural forces. We bow to no gods or gods and celebrate our outsider status. To embrace the name Satan is to embrace rational inquiry, removed from supernaturalism and archaic tradition-based superstitions. The Satanist should actively work to hone critical thinking and exercise reasonable inquiry in all things. Our beliefs must be malleable to the best current scientific understandings of the material world, never the reverse. So they say that they differ only in secular philosophies in a couple of ways. Quote, a unifying attribute of all Satanists is our embrace of our outsider status. Satanists adhere to the principles of individual sovereignty and the rejection of tyrannical authority. Additionally, Satanism is deeply rooted in a rich historical tradition which spans thousands of years in cultures across the globe. We embrace our literary and philosophic roots as part of our religion. These histories and
Dude, this is great ASMR. Just sitting here listening to Ben Shapiro read the tenets of Satanism. Big fan.
thousands of years in cultures across the globe. We embrace our literary and philosophic roots as part of our religion. These histories and concerns are of paramount importance to us, but are not fundamental components of humanism or other secular philosophies. So basically, they are just secularism, but they like to hook that up with Satanism. Now, again, these two things are not in direct opposition. Remember that Satan as a sort of quasi-biblical concept, it differs from Judaism to Christianity. But historically speaking, Satan was the opposite of God. Well, secularism also considers itself in many ways the opposite.
No, it does not in any way. He says in many ways, in no ways. Secularism is, you know what, let me just define it here. Denoting attitudes, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. Like secular buildings would be buildings that are not churches, for example. Secular society is one where religion is a private matter for you, and it's not pushed by the government. The government does not fund or encourage one religion over another.
Historically speaking, Satan was the opposite of God. Well, secularism also considers itself in many ways the opposite of God. So there is an identity between the two, which is why you see the values of SatanCon being mirrored in so much of our society.
Again, this argument is basically Satanists are against slavery, so we should be in favor of it.
Like the same classes being taught at SatanCon are now taught in third grade at public schools across the nation. And why gender is a spectrum. Why you should be able to
No, that is not taught in third grade. Nobody's teaching that in schools at all.
In third grade at public schools across the nation. And why gender is a spectrum. Why you should be able to trans the kids. Why abortion is an ultimate good.
Nobody is arguing any of that in schools. Literally nobody.
The value of intersectional identity. Right? All of these things that are being taught in the widespread culture are being mirrored by the Satanic Temple and vice versa. Because when you realize that secularism defines itself in opposition to traditional religious values, you understand the necessity of transgressing all the rules, breaking down all the rules, breaking down all the boundaries. And so when I say that Satanism is now diffused through the again, I don't mean that people worship Satan. I mean that in the original sense, if you read the Bible, like the original Hebrew Bible, when it talks about Satan, it's talking about the adversary. The adversary in Jewish
there is no Satan in the Jewish belief system. Satan isn't actually, an adversary is not mentioned until Job, and it's not Satan. It's a word that is used that kind of sounds a little bit like Satan. It was somebody who is asking a question inquisitively. Hey, God, do you think that Job would still worship you if his life was destroyed? And God says, I think so. Let's destroy his life. And they burn him to the ground. Boils, take his children, his wife, his cattle, his land, his everything. And he still worships. So the questioner says, you were right. How about that? That's what that was about. Our modern conception of Satan didn't come around until 300 CE, give or take. The Apocalypse of Peter was written in 100 to 150 CE. So like 100 years after Jesus died. And it was it was challenging the book of Revelation for a position in the Bible. And the book of Revelation won out at the end of the day, obviously, but the Apocalypse of Peter should have won. The Apocalypse of Peter is kind of the predecessor to Dante's Inferno. The book, the book is called Divine Comedy. It was by Dante, and there's a chapter titled Inferno, I believe. And it detailed hell, basically. And a lot of people say that's where we get our concept of hell. Actually, it's not. The Apocalypse of Peter, around 100 years after Jesus' death, is where we get our concept of hell. But the devil is very much a Christian thing. It's not Jewish in any way. In fact, original sin was added later. Concept of like an afterlife was even added later. I think Jews today believe that they will have an afterlife, like in heaven. I don't remember what the current belief system is.
Again, I don't mean that people worship Satan. I mean that in the original sense, if you read the Bible, like the original Hebrew Bible, when it talks about Satan, it's talking about the adversary. The adversary in Jewish philosophy is supposed to be a messenger of God who sort of plays almost prosecuting attorney against man. But the idea of being adversarial toward religion.
So he says he's a messenger of God. That's literally how the word angel is translated. It means messenger of God. So he's saying he was an angel that plays prosecutor against man. So he's saying that Satan in Jewish philosophy is one that just doesn't like mankind and is trying to talk God into destroying it, I guess.
Has now been taken up by all of our society, which is how you get to the cultural predations that we currently see, in which all traditional ideas have to be torn down. And I will mention the cowardice of the people over at the Satanic Temple. I noticed one thing they were not doing is
They're cowardice?
is ripping the pages out of Quran. And they're very
please.
very fond of ripping pages out of Bibles because they know that Christians are going to be totally fine with it. And
No, that's not why they do it. Is because Islam doesn't really affect people in the United States right now. It's the center of debate and hate and everything in Europe because there are a lot of refugees coming from Middle Eastern countries who are Muslim and trying to immigrate or seek asylum in European countries like the UK, for example. So it's a problem over there. But you know what problem we're dealing with here in America? Christian nationalists doing everything that they can to commandeer the reins of government and control it and impose their religious beliefs on everybody around them, up to and including forcing them to go to church every week. That is in Project 2025. Forcing them not to look at, pictures that they don't want them to look at. Forcing them to burn books or get rid of books that they own. They're not allowed to go to the library and borrow certain books. That's the problem we're dealing with. Now, the Satanic Temple, I know, I can say this personally because I know some of the people over there are not afraid of coming at Islam. They're not.
and don't care and are annoyed, but let it go. You rip the pages out of a Quran and see how it goes for you over at SatanCon 2023.
Yeah, it would be fine. Nobody would care. It doesn't affect us here, really. Islam has problems and is absolutely psychotic in a lot of ways, and they do believe that the death penalty is a just punishment for blasphemy and a bunch of other things, but not in America. It's just not a problem here. Anyway, tell me what you think about Ben Shapiro breaking down the Satanic Temple's tenets for us. Absolutely insane.